All right, we're live. We're back. My name is Sunny Ray. This is the Sunny Ray Show. Today I'm with Tino. Go, Tino. Where are you calling in from today?
Today I'm in the San Francisco area, East Bay, Hayward specifically.
Sunny San Francisco. Cool. One of my favorite places on earth. That's for sure. Tino. So why don't you kick us off? Tell us a little bit about Baru. What you guys are building there, and yeah, super excited about this one.
Yeah, essentially we're reinventing the design build industry to make it super a lot more easier for clients and architects and contractors, because and the way we do that is we digitally connect design with localized manufacturing. So the design that a designer creates is dynamically priced and is manufacturing ready because we've engineered all our products to be like that.
Super interesting. Super interesting. Okay, so I've got a bunch of questions keyed up, so we'll leave that one for a little bit later. But let's take it back a little bit. Tino, you were born in Indonesia, raised in Michigan, as the eldest of four, right, with a physician father. What was the dinner table like?
You know, I my childhood was very rebellious. And so the dinner table was, I felt like I was already beyond high school, outgrown all of that really early in my formative years. And so I started being very independent very rapidly. And so the dinner table until I was in middle school was pretty similar to any hardworking immigrant family. Dad was always at work. Was left home at 6 and came home 7 or 8. Mom was mom. She held it together, at least with my other siblings. And but I was doing my own thing for a huge amount of time. And I've always been like super passionate about whatever topic I was in. Like in fourth grade, I remember spending all my waking hours reading World War II books. and and then in middle school, I got completely infatuated by photography. Um, the and initially, I wanted to be a photojournalist. Like bring peace to the world and have major impact. But and then later on, in the ninth grade, I decided, okay, war and horrible things continue to exist. So photojournalism must not be effective in instigating change. So at that point, I switched to fashion photography, because if I can't instigate change, at least I can bring fantasy into people's lives and 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 a dream. And at the end of high school, I actually picked up two scholarships for photography. One was the first place prize from Eastman Kodak. So apparently, it was the first portfolio out of 40,000 submissions. The other one was from a local foundation, and that sent me to Europe. So that was my formative youth. Aside from climbing, I started climbing when I was 15, so I started doing other bold things too.
Super cool. So Exile Productions, right? Age 18 or so, advertising production. Like, how do you start a company with no playbook?
Okay, so the one scholarship sent me to Europe. I spent 5 months in gallivanting Europe. 3 of those months I was in Paris, where I had walked into one of the big fashion studios of the day and asked if I could work for free. The owner of that studio liked the price, and he happened to be from Detroit. And so it was a really easy offer for him to accept. And so I worked at Click Clack Studios, and rubbing elbows, or maybe elbows and knees, my elbow, their knees, with folks like Helmut Newton, Guy Bourdin, like the fashion greats of the day, the fashion photographer greats of the day. And so that was a fascinating experience. 18-year-old, totally green, but rubbing elbows with the greats and seeing how the real world worked. And So when I came back to the U.S., I enrolled in art school in Detroit, the Center for Creative Studies, it was called at the time. And but I saw such a huge disconnect between what I saw in Paris and the curriculum that I dropped out. That's when I started my freelancing as a photo assistant initially, and then became a full-fledged producer and coordinator of location. Whenever you went on location with a bunch of vehicles, I was focused in automotive photography, catalogs, ads. At that time, it was still shot on 8x10 film with large crews. If you wanted a scene with rain, well, you had to bring the rain, and you had to find the location. Had to permit it, and so that was all. That was what I was doing. So,
And
and
then,
that
oh,
and
sorry,
and
continue.
that is what Exile Production was. It was me working as a producer.
And you ran that thing for 12 years, right? Across Detroit, LA, Paris, Italy. What did Europe teach you that America couldn't?
Well, I was recruited, so I ran Exile in for the first 5 years, Detroit, and then LA. And then I was recruited to work for Cosmos. They were one of my clients' reps at the time. And I got along well with the owner of Cosmos. And so I was recruited to Paris. And, I was a producer for 3 years. And then I learned Italian, and Christian, my boss, he gave me Italy. And then I opened a small office in Dusseldorf. So what did I learn was people are the same. They have their differences, cultural agendas, different habits and expectations, but ultimately people are the same. There are more commonalities than differences, and being attentive to those. Attentive to both commonalities and differences allows you to manage in other environments and scenarios.
And then I guess after 12 years, you walked away. You said you saw another 25 or 30 years of the same thing. What does boredom feel like to a serial founder?
Boredom is, I wasn't being challenged anymore. It felt like more or less the same thing. It was only growth on the margin, and I like big moves. Like big moves like Detroit to Los Angeles when I was 20. Big moves like taking a few months sabbatical and learning French, and then getting invited to France, and then being given Italy to grow and manage, then deciding to open an office in Dusseldorf because there was the rest of the Northern European continent, etc., etc. So I like big moves, and I wasn't seeing those kinds of big moves available to me by the time 1995 rolled around. And so, but what I had been observing is I was a really avid reader of The Economist, and I wanted to understand how that worked. In 1987, I happened to sell a portfolio of stocks to fund my trip to learn French. And when I arrived in Paris, that was Black Monday. So I had sold the prior week to fund my trip, and when I arrived, there was a stock market crash, and that lingered in my mind. The recession of 82 and 92 lingered in my mind. I wanted to understand how does this mechanism work? What is this mechanism that keeps blindsiding me? Because even if I wasn't able to predict it, I found sexy the idea of understanding it. And so that's what caused me to be more interested in economics and finance, and thus my leaving advertising with intent of changing careers. And so that meant going back to Michigan, etc.
So I was going to say some MBA at Kelly, law program at Case Western. So what were you actually trying to learn?
So economics and finance, and to capture a new set of tools, to capture a new set of understandings. I didn't know how I would implement it. I just knew I wanted to understand. And so that meant coming back to Michigan. I stayed in my parents' basement for a year while I went to community college. Ended up getting a full scholarship to the University of Michigan to study economics, and then followed that with an MBA at Indiana in Bloomington, and most of a master's of accounting and law program. It was all about accumulating new tools, so I could deploy those tools. I didn't know how I would deploy those tools. I just wanted to learn them.
So maybe let's shift gears a little bit. So CFO of a $1.2 billion BASF unit, and then you quit to go build a furniture marketplace. So walk me through that decision.
Yeah, it was. So I entered after the education. I entered investment banking in 2000, but that was a very short-lived stint because the dot-com bust and 9/11 imploded that industry. And then I went back to Detroit, taking advantage of the economic cycle. I understood, okay, let's go do workouts and turnarounds. So I worked for a couple of firms in Detroit. One of them was Ford Motor Company's go-to for all of their supply chain risk post 9/11. So I did that for a few years, and that was another experience of drinking through a fire hose, learning through a fire hose. That was fabulous. I loved it. Then I met my ex in Norwalk, Ohio. My first job overseeing a company was overseeing the American division of Jiffy Products of America. Jiffy Products, we made peat pots and peat-based planting products for consumer and industry. That was a little $12 million operation, manufacturing distribution, when I arrived. And through I survived the first year, learning my job and how to create financial statements. And then the next 4 years was just a wild ride, because we grew that operation we doubled it organically, and we acquired two more worth $60 million in revenue. So essentially, Jiffy Products of America grew from 12 to 85 million in 5 years. So that was my first corporate finance experience. And then I hopped around after that. My last role was overseeing a $1.2 billion business unit at BASF. But I was only there temporarily while the business unit CFO was on medical leave. And when I left there, during that stint, I wanted a custom bookcase for my house. And I was so frustrated by that experience that when I left that interim engagement, I did three things. I looked for a job, I did fractional work, and I started looking at this idea. Okay, and I started investigating this industry. How come it's so persistently old-fashioned, backwards? I hadn't caught up with the times. And that was prompted by the fact that by 2015, I had been taking my sons to Maker Faire for almost 10 years. And I saw the screen to machine technology evolving, and I was seeing evidence of this digital manufacturing through the 3D printing craze, and I was seeing it through in some of the companies I oversaw. And so I was just shocked that the woodworking industry was so primitive. And so that curiosity led me to look at the industry, furniture making, cabinet making. And I realized for a bunch of different reasons, including globalization, it would not be able to evolve on its own. But I also recognize that there are thousands of underused CNC machines in the cabinet makers all over the country. And I thought, if I can tie these digital manufacturing machines into a virtual factory, then I could potentially change the entire industry and supply chain.
That is such a massive idea. That's crazy. So you've called custom manufacturing medieval. Like, what specifically shocked you?
There was no digital continuity. Even finding a custom cabinet maker or someone to build your bookcase was a medieval process. You didn't know who to turn to. It was all word of mouth. It was, who did you work with, and how do you find this person? You find them in some industrial park. You knock on the garage door, and someone peeks out the man door, and it's like, who is it? and and maybe you trust him or her, maybe you don't, and it starts with pencil drawings, and then it goes back and forth for days or weeks or months, and until everyone agrees, yeah, that's the look I want, and that's a price I can accept, even though I was swallowing hard to look at that price. And that was stupid to me. Why can't we go directly from screen to machine the same way that 3D printing works? Why can't you design at a consumer level? Why can't you design it on a screen and have that directly manufactured? The technology's there, but no one's deploying it. And then
This is like what, like an Airbnb for CNC machines?
yeah, Airbnb for manufacturing, or Uber for CNC machines. DoorDash for buying the cabinets. You configure the cabinets to fit your little Manhattan corporate space, and it gets made and delivered and installed.
So you said that it was the triangulation of three observations, right? So what were the other two?
It was the digital manufacturing was mature enough. There was enough in this space. There was enough harmonization of the activity silos where you can create an algorithm or a digital link, and you could create a process around the individual activity silos, design, around the design to manufacturing process, and that creates harmony, or some harmonies that creates some alignment around the various stakeholders. For example, the bookcase behind you, if you could imagine that and design it, and it was dynamically priced and manufacturing ready, you could hand it off to your general contractor, and your general contractor may make small tweaks around, this needs to be a little bit smaller or a little bit larger to fit this space, yada, yada, yada. They can take that design package that has a cost and manufacturing instructions. They can have it rebid if they want. Unlikely, because rebidding it usually involves manual drawings and that, the traditional iterative process. And the local subcontractor, the local cabinet maker who's going to be making it, it's probably going to be one of the easiest jobs they've had, because we send them, when a customer approves and purchases the product, we take that sales order and send them, convert it into machine instructions and a delivery of the required materials. So the manufacturer doesn't ever have to speak with the customer, where they're earning really high margins on their idle machine utilization. because we've provided the machine instructions and the materials. Their costs are for electricity, screws, glue, assembly.
So the patent, right? You're using like AR and VR to drive manufacturing
No,
instruction. No?
the patent, yeah, the patent is for the use of AR and VR to be able to change the look of an item and have that visual be pre-connected to the manufacturing instructions. But we're not using the patented technology yet. But the arose because in the earliest days of this idea of Baru, I was speaking with one of my co-founders, Kevin, and we were brainstorming around, okay, how do you convert desire into manufacturing instructions? And we came up with the idea that a customer knows what they want only after they've seen it. What if you could change what it looks like until they approve it and have that already have been embedded with the engineering, the pricing, and the manufacturing instructions? So it's parametric engineering, putting a friendly user interface, which is AR and VR, and maintaining that digital integrity between what it looks like and what a machine will be instructed to do.
So smart. So smart. So most CNC machines run what, like 2 hours a day? Why doesn't anyone else see that as like an Airbnb sized opportunity?
In truth, they do, and the folks in this industry, many of them, when I approach them, they said, I've often thought of that, but they're running their own businesses and they are not running a disruptive company they're not running a company with the intent of disrupting the supply chain and industry. They're running their own little job shop. They, if they were to change, they would probably have to close that shop.
Yeah.
For various reasons.
And what's the one moment you knew Baru was real and not, a finance guy's like side project?
So at the time, as a solo founder, at least the most committed, I had my colleague design a bunch of parametrically engineered custom desks. They were desks with drawers on sit-stand legs. And we had that online, and Google called me in March of 2020, asking if I would be willing to give their Google employees a discount because they were setting up home offices. And so we sold $70,000 of desks and had them manufactured in a dozen metro areas using the same process of sending them the machine instructions and the materials. And that was the proof of concept that this would work.
Wow. So, but Baru today, right? Where are you? Cabinets, Bay Area, Trade Pros. Like, why did you narrow?
Yeah. So in 21, after COVID, one of our Bay Area manufacturers said, "Why don't you get into cabinetry?" And so I thought that was the inevitable next step, because you get much larger orders, you get much better material yields when you're cutting a lot of products. Okay, and so I moved out to San Francisco, started selling kitchens, but I fulfilled the old-fashioned way. I hired an engineer. He did the drawings, and then we sent the subsequent machine instructions to a local manufacturer. So it was kind of like a bridge. But I did that for a few projects just to learn about the industry. the the sales cycle, and to learn to confirm if I created software to automate a bunch of manual activity, would there still be a viable business from a financial viewpoint? And when, after 21, 22, after delivering a few projects, I had that evidence. Then in 23, I sought the right co-founding partners to help me build this idea, build the software. And that's when I recruited David. He came on board in September of 2023. And we started, during his nights and weekends, he engineered the architecture. Then we had it built by a software development team in India. Great team. And then we launched. In 24, we had our very first project using that system. There was a lot of sneaker net behind the scenes still. But it showed that the business model still held water. The profitability was still there. And and we've continued on. Since then, we've produced beta projects in 15 metro areas, everything from hotel remodels to residential kitchens to the little corporate kitchenette that you see behind me.
Nice. It's beautiful. So the pitch is what, like 40% cost savings, right? By killing long distance shipping and inventory. Where does that money actually go?
Yeah. So, okay. And this is going to get really wonky. 60% of cost of sales is distribution. 60% of cost of sales is approximately 40% of revenues. So the way we eliminate distribution costs is by making local manufacturers accessible at the machine level. The traditional way you work with these manufacturers is the old-fashioned way. In other words, they're full-service custom cabinet makers. They cost a lot because their processes are not scalable, and they're just inefficient by their nature. They're craftsmen and women. So by making things accessible and by making it self-service and fully digitized, the 40% cost savings happens at the activity level on behalf of the architect and designer customer, elimination of a lot of work, and through the local manufacturing, which eliminates the distribution costs. You're muted.
Oh, my bad. AI in your stack, where does it sit? Design, translation, machine instructions, routing?
AI, right now we're not deploying it heavily, but since it's our library that has all the pricing and manufacturing intelligence, we can put our library into any design tool, including generative design. So, it's in our near-term roadmap to upload our library into Gen AI, so that way you can watch it self-create. You can watch it self-create in maybe AR and VR, and that would be patented.
Tariffs, reshoring, deglobalized manufacturing. Like your thesis got handed a tailwind. What changed for you in the last 18 months?
In the last 18 months, not very much. We're still very bootstrappy, and so it's. In the past 18 months, I was initially in Atlanta and Philadelphia, where we had some early sales. I was trying to get the sales flywheel to move, and it wasn't. And because the construction industry is generally very conservative, very averse to change, and so it was a struggle. It was a struggle to get the sales flywheel to turn. That's when last summer I decided to move back to San Francisco, because the hypothesis. Well, we had a sale here, and so that's made me think about the Bay Area. And moving back out here, the hypothesis was people shouldn't be afraid of innovation, and that's largely true. No one's afraid of innovation here. It just prompts curious conversations, and that those curious conversations, they lead to sales.
Oh, interesting. Very interesting. So the patent has been described as relevant to military applications and medical implants. Like, what's the next vertical after cabinets?
That's fun. I wonder where you get your background information. Maybe Claudia. Uh,
Claudia, definitely.
um, so the whole idea is if you can mold it in AR or VR, the same way that you mold modeling clay, that could be extracted as a STL file and go directly into digital printing. And so one of the promoters of DoD dual use technology asked me to present to the Department of Defense how that would work in a war supply chain situation. So I did that. Subsequent to that, we applied for a continuation in part on the patent, applying the technology to medical implants, so the doctor or the technician could adjust a medical implant for a patient's unique anatomy. And we got that. But we're not actually deploying that. Someone at DuPont told me that I should promote this technology for one of their divisions, and they do medical implants, and eventually we'll get around to that. But that will be purely a licensing and technology licensing deal. Our use will still stay in the realm of interior remodels.
So I think you said you've raised about 700K, right? Mostly angels in your own capital. Why no big VC round yet?
Because I'm struggling to tell the story that allow people to understand or believe that I'm the guy to pull it off, or my team is the team to pull it off. Yeah, so 550,000 from angels, and a couple 100,000 of my own money until I stopped counting. I stopped counting when it became a C corp, and I couldn't flow it through my taxes.
So help me land the plane, Tino. I mean, wow, I'm super interested, intrigued, and yeah, I would love to follow up here. But yeah, like I said, help me land. 5 years out, what does Baru look like, and what does manufacturing look like, because Baru exists?
So 5 years out, we'll certainly be in the top 100 metro areas. And if you do a bottoms up analysis, in the top 100 metro areas, you've got 250 million Americans, and about 7.5 million residential kitchen remodels. Doing 1% of them at 15,000 each takes our top line to 1.1 billion. 400 million is ours to redeploy to investors and growth. We'll probably be sending code and overseas by that time, and probably be in many more categories than cabinetry, where the picture can represent that e-commerce interface. how do I want it to change the industry? I want to eliminate mass production supply chains. Yeah, I mean, quite simply. Henry Ford invented a great process, and it has been a great process for about 100 years, but its time has come to end because of the inherent inefficiency of the lie around the efficiency of mass production being efficient. If you have to, if 60% of cost of sales is wasted on distribution, then the process of mass production is inherently flawed.
Yeah, that's a mission I can get behind. Tino, what an interview, man! I wasn't expecting this one to be that. You're such a well-spoken gentleman, and you're very articulate. I got the story loud and clear, and wow, we have almost 20 people listening live. Thank you all for tuning in. Tino, where do people learn more about Baru? Is it hellobaru.com or what's the website?
It is hellobaru.com, and my email is tino@hellobaru.com. I can find.
Awesome. Awesome. Well,
Okay.
thank you for your time. I really, really appreciate it. And yeah, I would love to have you back on here, in a couple months as the story progresses. And I don't know, to me it feels like you're in the right place at the right time. And I need cupboards. We'll talk soon. We'll talk soon. Cheers, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.